Right, if I asked you to think of one of the fastest swimmers in the sport of triathlon, I'm pretty sure most of you would think of Lucy Charles-Barclay. Yeah, she has brought a whole new dynamic to the long distance racing scene. She basically just attacks from the off during the swim and tries to lead from gun to tape. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure she has ever been beaten out of the water. Now, Lucy is a great friend of the channel here at GTN, so we've filmed loads of her over the past couple of years, and conveniently, we've got loads of swim footage of her. So I thought I'd have a bit of fun here today. I thought we could analyze Lucy's swim technique and see why she's such a great swimmer, and you never know, maybe give her some pointers too. Okay, so I'm gonna be running through a number of clips that are going to be appearing here on screen. But before we head below water, I'm actually going to start off above water first. Just quite good practice to see what's going on above water with the recovery. So if we hit play here, so Lucy has a lovely technique, really powerful technique. But considering she comes from a pool swimming background, I'm actually quite surprised to see just how straight her arm recovery is, as you see coming over here now, and then also how much splash she makes as her hand enters the water. Now, pause that there for a second. I have actually spoken to Lucy about this in the past because since she's come into triathlon, she's actually started changing her stroke ever so slightly. So one of the things she's been working on is her arm rate and increasing that, and basically how quickly her arms come over and into the water. With that, obviously, a slightly less emphasis on that nice clean hand entry that you might see in pool swimming. We actually see this quite a lot with some of the top level swimmers within triathlon, and I guess you can call it almost like a windmill arm effect. I do the same. It doesn't look pretty, but the emphasis is more on just getting that hand in, getting that catch, and getting that pull. And the idea is that in the open water, the water's more choppy. Obviously that clean hand entry isn't important, but also if you're getting knocked around by other swimmers or the water's moving underneath you and you lose a catch, then you want that next arm to be coming over really quickly. So Lucy's been working on that, and you can see that's reflected in her technique right there. Now if you press play again, you can also see she's got a really lovely rotation with her stroke. See her rotating over now, the other shoulder coming out. And also, it's just really nicely in time and in sync. Her shoulders and her hips both rotating together. Now this is really important and actually something that a lot of people fall short on. So the rotation really helps to utilize these much bigger muscle groups and more muscles actually in the body. So if you compare someone that's swimming flat in the water, then actually they're just hammering their pecs, their biceps, maybe a couple of other smaller muscles, but that's it. When we start rotating onto our side, we're then also utilizing our lat muscles, our back muscles. It stabilizes us in the water and it becomes a much, much more powerful stroke. Another thing also, again, if you're swimming flat in the water, think about that surface area in the water. From shoulder to shoulder, it's almost submerged in the water and you're almost trying to plow that through the water. As soon as we start rotating onto our side, we're reducing that surface area, almost halving it every time we rotate over. So not only are we utilizing more muscles, we're also reducing the surface area in the water. So it's a win-win. I'm also noticing a few other interesting things of Lucy's technique here. So I think it's time we head underwater. Okay, so now we've got Lucy swimming at us head on underneath the water. We can see that her eye line is pointing more or less directly beneath her to the bottom of the pool. She's got that great rotation that I was just talking about. But now I want to talk about how she pulls and also how her hand tracks underneath the water. Now she's got an incredibly strong pull, as we'd expect, and a really good bend in the elbow that allows that strong pull. But interestingly, her hand does not track underneath the body quite as the textbooks would suggest you should. So if I pause it now with her right arm, because this is particularly bad, I guess, or not as the textbooks would suggest, it comes really wide. We should expect the hand to be more or less underneath the body, but that looks particularly wide. And what this could actually do is force her over to the other side. So with the right arm, it's going to force her to the left. However, if we keep playing it here, her recovering arm entering sweeps ever so slightly left, and she does this every time of her stroke. I've looked through all her footage, and what that does is almost automatically corrects her and pushes her back into alignment. And this is probably something that Lucy isn't even aware that she's doing. It just happens. Now, for those watching this out there, this isn't something you should be striving to do. You should be looking for a really nice, symmetrical stroke. But I guess it's just really refreshing to see such a good swimmer doing these things too. Right, so side on here now, and we can really start to see why Lucy's such a good swimmer. So with that rotation that we were just talking about, it allows her to enter with the hand, scoot forward an extra fraction or so with the hand, and then we go into the catch phase, which she is incredibly good at. She looks incredibly strong. She doesn't allow her elbow to drop, and she has a really good purchase on the water. She's applying a good even pressure throughout the whole stroke. Now this helps in a couple of ways, so one of which is to remove any dead spots that we might see when we analyse a lot of other swimmers' strokes. And what this means is that essentially missing out that first part of the stroke, the catch phase of the stroke, just slip through it, and then we start to get traction or purchase on the water during the pull phase. Now I guess I kind of liken this a little bit to if you had a really pronounced heel strike when you're running. That heel goes out, it's like a braking force, slows you down, and then you've got to get it back over that to get your speed back up. And that's a little bit like missing that catch phase, we start to slow down, and then into the pull phase, you're trying to get that speed back up again. So very stop-start, it's quite an inefficient way of swimming. Whereas with Lucy, she's applying a nice even pressure throughout and not having to overly exert or try and put a lot of force down at one particular point to get that speed back up. Another thing it helps with, and we'll see when Lucy pops back up on screen now, is that it also helps with lift in the water. So by applying that pressure at the front of the stroke in the catch phase, helps to lift her ever so slightly in the water, which again reduces that surface area in the water. And I guess a little bit like a powerboat that's trying to skim along the surface of the water or something like that. Well, another thing to note also is that Lucy really ticks that high elbow box that we so often hear people talking about. So as she goes through that catch phase, she keeps the elbow really nice and high. She's applying pressure down through the water and then into that pull phase. Now that pull phase is essentially when the hand or the palm of the hand is pointing back towards your feet or the opposite end of the pull. And for Lucy, this seems to be around in line with her head. Now, as she actually starts the catch, she actually initiates the rotation and roll back towards the other side. So she goes through the catch phase, through the pull, all the way through to pushing out at the back of the hip. And as she's doing that, her other hand is entering at the front, starting the catch and providing that continuous momentum forward. But as she starts that, she's already fully rotated onto the other side. You will also notice that through all these clips today that her fingers are actually quite relaxed. In some cases, you might actually see a little bit of a gap between the fingers. Now, there is actually increasing evidence out there that suggests that this is faster, and that's why a lot of the top swimmers do this. Now, just to make clear, she has her fingers relaxed rather than being all floppy, and it's actually just, they're just naturally open rather than her forcing them open. But yeah, really interesting to see that. Right, well now let's move on to talk about breathing, and I'm going to revert back to one of these original clips because it just highlights it really well here with Lucy's stroke. And Lucy's actually breaking some of the textbook rules again, but obviously making it work for herself. So let's hit play here. So what we would want to see is that the eye line is pointing down towards the bottom of the pool, and when we go to take a breath, we actually just rotate the head around with the body. What Lucy actually does is as she goes to take the breath, she lifts her head up and her eye line up, so she's looking forward and then rotating the head around to take the breath. So just a little bit surprising there, which we can also see from a side-on angle here too as Lucy comes into shot. Now, for a lot of people, this would actually force their legs to sink, almost like a seesaw action. As the head comes up, legs sink. But Lucy does a fantastic job of keeping herself flat and neutral in the water. Now, this obviously also probably comes from the fact that she's been doing more open water swimming and swimming more in triathlons and having to sight. So being able to sight more naturally without impacting the stroke, the better, which Lucy is doing superbly. Now, what she's also doing is actually helping by, when the hand goes in and catches, that's applying pressure on the water and allowing that slight lift with the head, so the eye line comes up. Obviously, if she was sighting, she'd lift her eyes out a little bit higher. And then as that recovering arm comes around, she then snaps her head round to side, rotates, and takes her breath. So it's always sight and then breathe. And finally, the leg kick. Now, if we were to be comparing two polar opposite swimmers, sprinter versus a long distance 10K open water swimmer, their leg kicks are going to be wildly different, obviously. Now, the sprinter is going to have a very fast leg kick, something like an 8-beat leg kick. So that means 8 leg kicks for every 1 arm cycle, whereas the open water long distance swimmer is going to have something like a 2-beat leg kick. So it's almost going to look like they're just dragging their legs along and it's just acting like a balance for their stroke. Now, if we look at Lucy's kick, now she has something in the region of a 4-beat leg kick. So it's not too over the top, but it's providing some propulsion, but it's not going to be tiring her too much. And I do know, having watched her during racing and also doing race-based efforts in training, it doesn't change too much from that. And there's good reason for that. I mean, triathlon is still a long-distance event, it's an endurance event, so there is an element of having to save your legs, particularly given that we've got bike and run leg to come. Now, in terms of her technique, we can see that it comes from her hips, and we've got an ever so slight flex through the knee, and then following all the way down to the feet and flicking off at the toes. Now, Lucy is very lucky given that she comes from a swimming background, swum for years, she's got really nice supple ankles, so you can really see that she's got a very good flick off at the end and really providing that extra propulsion in her kick. Well, as I mentioned already, it's very rare to find the perfect technique. You'll find with most top level swimmers, they'll have some slight discrepancies with their techniques or unusual bits to their technique, as we've seen with Lucy today, but she clearly makes it work and it's still an absolutely incredible stroke. It is worth pointing out, obviously Lucy comes from an international swimming background. She spent countless hours in the pool, so some of those slight micro adjustments that she's making are just happening subconsciously, and that's something that will come a lot more naturally to her than it will for someone that maybe hasn't spent quite as much time in the pool. So I really would advise trying to learn the textbook techniques first and really nailing the fundamentals of the stroke before going on to adapt the stroke further. Now, if you do like today's video and you like Lucy Charles, then please do hit that thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more videos like this from GTN, just hit that globe icon on screen right now. If you'd like to see a video that we shot with Lucy Charles on some of her own swim tips, and you can see that by clicking down here. And if you'd like to see our pool versus open water swim technique video where we compare the differences between the two, then you can see that by clicking just down here.